We all watch media for different things. Some watch for an escape from their real life responsibilities, others watch to venture off and imagine themselves in worlds of grandiose fantasy, and other people just want to be entertained for a few minutes. But one thing we are all drawn to in media are characters that we can relate to. Some of the most beloved characters in all of fiction are the ones that look just like us, act like us, and are just as confused as I am on what to do with my life. So with this series, I want to talk about those characters, the ones that inspire us because they're one of us. Starting with Hinata Shoujo from Haikyuu, one of the most relatable characters in anime. Now, Haikyuu is already a series that thrives off of characterization, character development, and emotional, impactful scenes. And at the epitome in the center of that is the main character, Hinata. He personifies and exemplifies everything from the underdog story that the show portrays, the never giving up attitude that it seems like all shonen protagonists already have, the idea of overcoming the disadvantages that have nothing to do with his own actions and decisions, and using all of his experiences, even in defeat, as a learning lesson instead of something to be sad about. You see, from the beginning of the story, Hinata comes from a standpoint of being in love with the sport of volleyball, with one day just passing by a TV and seeing the little giant of Karasuno High School soar through the skies, becoming one of the best in the high school circuit of Japan. And instantly, he was hooked on the spectacle, the greatness, the view from the top of the summit that you must feel being an ace for one of the best teams in your country. Hinata from that day on strived to be in that same spot. The little giant, the little kid, the shorty on the court that could rise with the giants, that could soar to the top of the mountain and become a star overnight. But even from a young age, he knew how much work this would take, and just like many of us, we find ourselves identifying a goal and working a large percentage of our life to reach a point to where we can finally feel happiness in that goal that we set out to accomplish. And with Hinata, this took precedent in middle school, where he understood that in his final year, this would be the last and only opportunity for him to prove he had what it took to become part of a high school volleyball program. So in middle school, he rounded up his friends, those that would be willing to, but not necessarily enthusiastic, and proceeded on his journey to become a high school volleyball player, starting with creating a makeshift volleyball team overnight because his school didn't already have one. There were a lot of circumstances that were in place that Hinata had no control over and just had to deal with in order to get to where he wanted to get. His middle school didn't even have a volleyball team, so they were automatically underfunded because they weren't funded. He had to rope together a bunch of unpassionate, barely willing people to help him with his dream that didn't share nowhere near the same dream as him and were just inept at the sport. They knew nothing. They could do nothing. They were honestly just traffic cones on the court with Hinata, who truly wanted to accomplish this goal, facing someone like Kageyama in their first and only match of the year, who was on the other end of the net, being the king of the court. There are a lot of times in Hinata's life, in everyone's life, where despite your dreams, despite your goals, you find yourself in a position surrounded by people who just don't share that same goal. Most of us are surrounded by people different goals and aspirations than us. You're put in a position to where you have little to no control over the circumstances of your birth, where you go to school, and sometimes even the people that surround you that you have to deal with in pursuit of that one thing that you're trying to achieve all along. And for Hinata, this was walking in the footsteps of the little giant of Karasuno, in which after middle school, he ended up going to. Going into Karasuno, Hinata had quite a bit of expectations from just simply being on a volleyball team that was expected to come back from the years of dormancy that Karasuno had seen previous to Kageyama and Hinata's arrival. And spending so much time in that first year, in that first semester, being so reliant upon the skills of Kageyama, his rival and also eventual best friend, and striving to not be the burden on others, only fed to his own hunger and his love for the sport of volleyball. Going from being surrounded by unmotivated people who had different goals and aspirations and just couldn't possibly understand his love for the game, to being surrounded by so many gifted, talented, hardworking, and passionate people just like him, and coming to the realization that he's not self-reliant like he wants to be. He lacks the fundamentals of the sport, and all of this is because of a situation that he couldn't possibly have control over. He grows into a pretty good hitter, but still used as a decoy on the team due to his lack of fundamentals, control, and over-reliance on, like I said before, his instincts. But one day, Hinata witnesses something that potentially changes his entire outlook on the game that he spent so much time loving and improving on, but not truly understanding the next step to take in his journey. After a tournament and returning back to Karasuno, the roster for the national team, at least the junior national team, is announced, with 2 of his teammates being selected in Tsukishima and Kageyama to be a part of the national team. Hinata is left in the dust. Despite his more flashy playstyle and his importance to the team, 2 relatively prototypical volleyball players are chosen ahead of him despite his improvements. So, in search for knowledge and search for improvement and search for more attention and inclusion and just be able to stay on the court for as long as possible at the highest level, he sneaks into the training camp. As the ball boy at this training camp, as he's relegated to because of his, sneakage, Hinata spends the first parts of the training camp lost. He's dejected. He feels like he's been relegated to such a position to where he can't even learn anything. He's surrounded by all this great talent. He's surrounded by all these players. He's surrounded by 2 of his own teammates, players that he's seen in the circuit before, players that he's faced a plethora of times in the series, but he can't play. He's not there to share the court with them. He's not there to put balls on the other side of the net. He's there to catch. He's not even there to receive. He feels worthless. And there's a point in the camp to where he questions, and Ushijima, main ace and the top hitter in all of Japan, comes up to him, and after a previous conversation with him to where he was impressed, after a previous match with him to where he saw potential in the young kid, says, "What are you even doing here?" Ensuing that he's wasting his time and he's not even adding to his game, and he could be doing so much more. And also after a meeting with his coach from Karasuno, who allowed him to stay at the camp and gave him the position and talked him into the position of getting ball boy, he realizes that coach had told him to not underestimate the role of a ball boy. And it's then when Hinata realizes what he could do to constantly improve even in this state. Despite the coach that is at the camp, not Karasuno's coach, also telling Hinata that he sees nothing in the kid. He would have never invited him to the camp, and he's only there because he was able to swindle his way in, and honestly, he just has to deal with it. But despite this, Hinata realizes what he can do. As the ball boy, you have the position to not only just catch balls from everyone, but you have to watch out for where balls are going. Yeah, you get to see the court from an aspect of seeing everyone's moves and seeing the directions and the patterns of the way that people play. So, after wallowing in his own self-thought for a minute, Hinata comes out thirsty, hungry for more knowledge, striving to get to the goal that he set for himself so long ago despite all of his challenges, despite circumstances being against him, despite being in a place where not only does he not belong, but he's unwanted by the person who can control whether he's there or not. Hinata learns to watch the patterns of the players. He learns how to get in the spot where the ball is going to go. He learns the reads. He learns the patterns. He learns the game. He learns one of the weakest parts of his game and one of the most important parts of the sport. And even when he returns to Karasuno, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. He doesn't have it down pat. He's not some libero or anything, but he's improved. He saw it from the greats. He saw it from those who had more experience than him. He saw it from those he could pick up knowledge from. And he did it in a way to where he could purely focus on doing what he had to do, getting out of there and adding it to his repertoire, bringing it back to his team, and getting ready for nationals. We all love something, a sport, a craft, a art, a subject, and some of us, all of us, have a level of natural aptitude for that thing. All of us have suffered from expectations placed on us because of our physical attributes or lack thereof that quite frankly we just can't control. All of us fall victim to the circumstances that surround our lives, that are in other people's hands, but our lives, our day-to-day actions, our decisions have to deal with the aftermath. But through Hinata, we see a character who constantly strives, who constantly fights, who keeps on striving for this growth, for this opportunity, for these chances of improvement at every single turn. No matter the task or the situation, at the end of the road, our little volleyball player reaches the top of the summit. When I was watching Haikyuu, I could very much relate to Hinata's love for a specific art, specific craft, something that he was willing to pour his heart and soul into every single day to just get an inkling better, to just get a smidget more, just a taste of how life was like to be at that pinnacle, being surrounded by people who loved it just as much as you, and even being in circumstances where you're taken away or just didn't have in the first place the resources, the people, the investments into you, or just the basics that you needed to truly accomplish that dream that you had. I understand how it feels to not necessarily be valued on the same level as everyone else because of circumstances that you really can't control. You're good at something else, or you're just not good at this one thing, and because of that, people are going to hold you back. There are going to be situations, there are going to be rooms where you can't enter, and sometimes you just have to deal with that and try to make good of the situation. There's always something good to be taken away. There's always a lesson to be learned. There's always something to observe. There's always people to learn from. I had to learn that in different ways than this little kid, but this story, this show, this anime helped me realize that it's not something that I'm unique to. It's something that a lot of us share. It's something that a lot of people go through, and it's something that makes Hinata one of the most relatable characters in anime. Thank you for watching this video. If you're here, leave a like, subscribe, comment your opinion on the video, comment your opinion on Haikyuu. I hope we get the ending of it this year because there isn't much left, so I'm sure they're just going to adapt all the way to the ending the next time it gets adapted. I'm really excited for this series. I have quite a bit of videos planned on this similar topic, and then of course going into comic books as well, some relatable characters I find in there, and I hope that you guys will as well. But aside from that, I have a podcast that I will be starting with a few of my friends that I believe we'll be live streaming on Twitch at Cardiac K on January 8th, Saturday. So be on the lookout for that. And aside from that, I hope that you guys have a good day. I hope that you guys have a good new year. And thank you for supporting. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.